I lived by the never hurry, never worry rule for 7 days. Does your mind ever feel like a constant battlefield? Mine does. It's a relentless storm of deadlines, notifications, and a to-do list that seems to grow on its own. I'm always rushing, always worrying. My screen time report is a horror story, and my baseline stress level is probably a biohazard. Sound familiar? I thought it might. This constant, low-grade panic feels like the default setting for modern life. So, I decided to try something radical, something that sounds impossibly simple and, frankly, a little naive. For 7 days, I lived by one simple rule, a classic aphorism: never hurry, never worry. I even added a third pillar to it: never doubt. I took on a 1-week challenge to never hurry, worry, or doubt, and I documented the entire process. What I discovered was a powerful secret about mindfulness and Stoicism that's hiding in plain sight, a secret that connects ancient philosophy with, of all things, our favorite manhwa recaps. And the results were not what I expected. The setup. Let's be clear about the rules of engagement. This wasn't just about telling myself to chill out. I needed a framework. This experiment was built on 3 concrete principles. Rule 1: never hurry. This meant consciously slowing everything down by about 10%, walking, talking, even typing. More importantly, it meant a hard commitment to doing one thing at a time. No more listening to a podcast while answering emails, while thinking about what's for dinner. It's about giving one thing your full attention, a concept that feels both luxurious and completely alien. Rule 2: never worry. Now, this one is tougher. The goal wasn't to suppress anxiety, but to engage with it differently. The inspiration here comes directly from Stoicism, specifically the dichotomy of control. When a worry popped into my head, I had to stop and ask one question: is this within my control? If yes, I had to figure out the smallest possible next action and take it. If no, my only job was to acknowledge the feeling and verbally accept that it was outside my sphere of influence. This is the core of reducing anxiety, putting your energy where it can actually make a difference. Rule 3: never doubt. This rule was all about targeting that spiral of second-guessing and analysis paralysis. When I felt myself hesitating or falling into a what-if loop, the goal was to either act decisively or, if action wasn't possible, adopt a neutral mantra. A simple phrase to quiet the noise, like, "I will trust the process," or "I don't mind what happens." The goal for the week was simple: follow these 3 rules and see what happened. I was skeptical. Part of me expected to fail by lunchtime on day 1. But the other part of me, the part that was just so tired of being tired, was desperate for a change. Day 1, the initial struggle. The first day was, in a word, awkward. The never hurry rule was immediately put to the test. It started with my morning coffee. Usually, this is a frantic, multitasking ballet of grinding beans while checking overnight notifications and planning my first 3 work tasks. Today, I just made coffee. I focused on the sound of the grinder, the smell, the slow pour of the water. It felt incredibly inefficient. My brain was screaming at me to do something else. It felt like I was wasting precious seconds. The first real challenge came with my inbox. An email flagged urgent. My heart rate immediately kicked up. The usual response? Fire back a reply in 90 seconds, riddled with typos and a frantic energy the recipient could probably feel through the screen. Instead, I forced myself to pause. I took a breath. I read the email slowly. Then, I read it again. This is where never worry came into play. I felt the anxiety spike, What if I don't reply fast enough? What if they think I'm ignoring them? I pulled out a notepad and drew 2 columns, control and no control. I could control the clarity and thoughtfulness of my response. I could not control how the sender would react to my response time. It seemed so simple, but writing it down made it real. I focused only on the first column and spent 10 minutes writing a clear, concise reply. It was a better email than I would have written in a hurry. When I hit send, I felt a strange sense of calm instead of the usual post-adrenaline buzz. But the never doubt rule? That was the hardest. Throughout the day, I second-guessed everything. Am I even doing this challenge right? Is this just making me slower? Should I just give up? The initial struggle was real and deeply uncomfortable. My mind, so used to a frantic pace, was fighting back, resisting this new, imposed calm at every turn. It felt like trying to teach a wild animal to sit still. Day 2. The subtle shift. Something shifted on the second day. It wasn't a lightning bolt of insight, but a quiet, subtle change in the texture of my day. The morning coffee ritual felt less awkward and more pleasant. That 10% slowdown was starting to feel less like a restriction and more like a choice. The real test came in the afternoon. I was working on a project with a tight deadline when a colleague sent a message about a problem that needed an immediate solution. Old me would have dropped everything, jumped into a state of panicked problem-solving, and worried about that deadline all the while. Instead, I applied the system. Never hurry. I finished the sentence I was writing before I even looked at the message. Never worry. I opened it, and as the familiar wave of anxiety started to build, I grabbed my control notepad. What could I control? My analysis of the problem, how I communicated with my colleague, the next 30 minutes of my focused effort. What was out of my control? The fact that the problem existed, the deadline, which was already set, the ultimate outcome. By separating those things, the mountain of worry became a small, manageable hill of action. I told my colleague I was looking into it and would get back to them in half an hour. That simple act of setting a boundary was revolutionary. It stopped the panic from hijacking my brain. I then spent a focused 25 minutes on the problem, and my mind felt sharper, less cluttered by the usual static of anxiety. Later that evening, while cooking dinner, I deliberately didn't put on a podcast or a YouTube video. I just cooked. I noticed the way the onions softened in the pan, the smell of garlic hitting the oil. I was still plagued by moments of doubt, but for the first time, I felt a tangible benefit. By giving tasks my undivided attention, I was not only doing them better, but I was also more present for them. The world started to feel a little less like a series of notifications to swipe away, and a little more like a place to be experienced. It was a small shift, but it felt significant. Day 3, the training arc revelation. Day 3 was the turning point. It was the day the secret started to reveal itself. I woke up feeling a bit frustrated, like the progress was too slow. My mind was still trying to convince me that rushing was more effective, and worrying was a necessary part of being responsible. I felt like I was putting in all this effort to slow down, and for what? Just to fall behind? And then, while scrolling through a feed during a break, I saw a clip from a manhwa recap. It was a classic training arc. You know the one. The hero gets utterly defeated. They realize their current approach is not enough. They don't just magically get stronger. They retreat, find a master, and go through a period of grueling, repetitive, and often seemingly boring training. They practice the same basic sword swing thousands of times. They fail, they get frustrated, they push through, and it hit me so hard I actually put my phone down. This whole week, This wasn't just a self-improvement challenge. This was my own, real-life training arc. I had been looking for a quick fix, a life hack. I wanted to skip to the end where I'm suddenly enlightened and calm. But that's not how it works. The power isn't in the destination, it's in the training. Strength isn't given, it's built. It's earned through disciplined, focused, and patient practice. Each time I chose to slow down, I was practicing a fundamental move. Each time I applied the dichotomy of control to a worry, I was sparring with my own mind. Each time I pushed past doubt, I was strengthening my resolve. This reframed the entire experiment. The point wasn't to achieve a permanent state of no hurry, no worry. The point was the practice. This is the secret hidden in plain sight, connecting ancient Stoic ideas and modern mindfulness to these stories we love. The Stoics were all about this. It's the idea of building your inner citadel, your mental fortress, brick by boring brick. Mindfulness is the same. It's not about one perfect meditation session, but the cumulative effect of returning your attention again and again. Suddenly, the frustration vanished, replaced by a sense of purpose. I wasn't failing by struggling. That was the work. I was on day 3 of my training arc, and for the first time, I was excited to see what day 4 would bring. If you've ever felt like you're stuck in a frantic loop, or if this idea of a real-life training arc resonates with you, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. We explore ideas like this every week. Practical philosophy for a chaotic world. And let me know in the comments, what would be the focus of your personal training arc? I'd love to hear it. Day 4. The deepest dip. Just like in any good story, after the revelation comes the trial. Day 4 delivered the biggest test of the week. I received an unexpected and significant bill. It was one of those life moments that feels like a punch to the gut. Immediately, every alarm in my body went off. The worry monster, which had been quiet for a day, came roaring back, bigger and uglier than ever. My mind started racing. How will I pay this? What will I have to sacrifice? This is a disaster. The urge to descend into a full-blown panic spiral was overwhelming. My heart was pounding, and my breathing got shallow. For a moment, I completely forgot about the challenge. I was just scared. This was it, the boss battle of the never worry rule. I forced myself to sit down, hands literally shaking, and grabbed my notepad. I could barely write the words control and no control. My brain was screaming that nothing was in my control, but I forced myself to think. What was truly outside my control? The bill's existence, the amount, the fact it had arrived. These were external events. Wasting energy being angry or terrified about them was pointless. What was within my control? My breath. That was the first thing. I closed my eyes and focused on taking 3 slow, deep breaths. It didn't solve the problem, but it stopped the immediate panic. It gave me a sliver of mental space. Okay, what else? I could control my actions. I could review my budget. I could list potential solutions. I could call the company to discuss a payment plan. These were small, concrete steps. Not a magic wand, but actions. Worry is a form of stagnation, a feedback loop of fear. This approach forces you into productive action, no matter how small. I spent the next hour doing just that. I made a spreadsheet. I drafted an email. I took the giant, terrifying monster of financial ruin and broke it down into a series of manageable, if unpleasant, tasks. I was still concerned, but the debilitating, paralyzing worry had subsided, replaced by a grim sense of purpose. This day was the deepest dip, but also the most profound lesson. These rules aren't for the easy days. They are a toolkit for the hard ones. They don't eliminate pain, but they offer a way to navigate it without being consumed by it. It was a brutal day, but by the end of it, I felt stronger, not in spite of the challenge, but because of it. Day 5. The new normal. After the trial of day 4, something incredible happened on day 5. It started to feel normal. The 10% slowdown wasn't a conscious effort anymore. It was just my pace. The urge to multitask had quieted from a roar to a whisper. I found myself dropping into a state of flow with my work more easily, fully absorbed in one thing at a time. I had a long meeting that afternoon, the kind that usually drains my soul. It was full of complex problems and different opinions. Normally, I would be a bundle of nerves, worrying about what everyone was thinking, doubting my own contributions. But today, I approached it differently. I didn't hurry my thoughts. When I spoke, it was deliberate. I didn't worry about controlling the outcome of the meeting or anyone else's opinion that was outside my control. I focused only on what I could control, listening attentively and contributing my perspective clearly. When I felt a flicker of doubt, I gently pushed it aside and spoke anyway. The result was astonishing. I was more engaged, more articulate, and way less exhausted. Because I wasn't wasting energy on the feedback loop of hurry, worry, and doubt, I had more energy for the task at hand. Here's the paradox. Slowing down was making me more effective. This day, I also truly understood the Stoic concept of amor fati, loving your fate. It's not just about accepting what happens, but embracing it. The stress of day 4 wasn't something to resent. It was the precise test I needed. The annoying tasks of my day weren't obstacles to my real life. They were my life. And by not rushing through them or worrying about them, I could find peace right in the middle of them. It felt like the training was finally becoming muscle memory. Day 6, the observation day. Day 6 was a day of observation. With my own internal chaos dialed down, I started to notice the chaos in the world around me with a startling new clarity. I went to a busy cafe, and it was like watching a nature documentary about a stressed-out species. People rushed their orders, tapping their feet impatiently. They talked on their phones while trying to listen to the barista. They scrolled their feeds with a frantic energy, faces lit by a pale blue light. I saw the me from a week ago, in all of them. I wasn't judging them. I felt a profound empathy. We are all caught in this machine that tells us faster is better, that we must be constantly worried or we'll fall behind. My own interactions felt different. I ordered my coffee, made eye contact, said thank you, and it was a complete, self-contained event. I sat and drank it, and that was the only thing I was doing. There was no internal pressure to be more productive. The never doubt rule also had its moment. An idea for a new project popped into my head. The old script would have been instant self-doubt. That's probably dumb. Someone else has done it. You don't have time. But the new training kicked in. Instead of letting doubt kill the idea in its cradle, I just accepted it. I took out my notebook and, without judgment, wrote it down. This was a new way of interacting with my own creativity, free from the paralysis of self-criticism. Watching the world hurry and worry around me wasn't a source of smugness. It was a confirmation. The path I had been on was the default, but it wasn't the only one. There is another way to move through the world. It requires conscious effort. The training never really ends, but the peace it offers in return is more than worth the practice. Day 7. Climax and reflection. On the final day, I felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. There was no grand finale, no sudden nirvana. But when I woke up, the first thing I felt wasn't a jolt of anxiety about the day, but a simple awareness of the morning light. That alone was a monumental victory. The entire week was a process of unlearning. Unlearning the myth that busyness equals importance, unlearning the belief that worry is a productive form of caring, unlearning the habit of letting self-doubt dictate my actions. So, what was the powerful secret? It's this: patience is a superpower, not the passive, waiting room kind of patience. It's an active, focused, powerful form of attention. It's the wisdom to know what you can control and what you can't, and the discipline to focus all your energy on what you can. This is the essence of Stoicism, the heart of mindfulness, and the philosophy behind every training arc that has ever inspired us. The hero doesn't get stronger by worrying about the final boss. They get stronger by focusing on the single sword swing right in front of them. They master their emotions and their technique, one repetitive, deliberate action at a time. Was the challenge a success? Absolutely. Not because I've become a person who never hurries or worries. That's impossible. It was a success because I now have the tools. I have the framework. I have my control notepad and the memory of my training. I've proven to myself that I can step out of the frantic current of modern life and find a calmer, more deliberate way of being. The rule, never hurry, never worry, never doubt, isn't a destination. It's a direction. It's a mantra for the training arc of life, and a reminder that the real work is always in the here and now. Conclusion. After 7 days, my screen time is down, my sleep is better, and my baseline stress has dropped significantly. But the biggest change is my perspective. I no longer see challenges as things to be furiously rushed through or worried about. I see them as the training itself. The obstacle is the way. The secret I was looking for wasn't some mystical insight. It was the simple, profound truth that wisdom isn't found in a frantic search. It's forged in the patient, focused practice of living. It's the realization that you have the power to choose your response. You can choose to hurry, or you can choose to be present. You can choose to worry, or you can choose to act. You can choose to doubt, or you can choose to trust the process. This experiment is over, but the training continues. Because just like in our favorite stories, the moment one arc ends is simply the beginning of the next one. Thank you for coming along on this journey. If this video gave you a new perspective, please give it a like and subscribe for more challenges that dive into philosophy, mindfulness, and how we can live better in the modern world. Now, I want to hear from you. What is the one thing in your life you could apply the never hurry, never worry rule to, starting today? Let me know in the comments below. Let's continue the conversation.